Wasn't it Robert Kennedy who used to say, when life gives out lemons, some of us turn sour, others make lemonade? In this life, we're all going to get a lemon or two, aren't we? How sour we become or how much lemonade we mix up depends on how much natural sweetener we have within. Here's our text, a familiar one from Luke chapter 15. Since the story is so familiar, I'm going to read from the Message. Luke 15, 1 to 32. By this time, a lot of men and women of doubtful reputation were hanging around Jesus, listening intently. The Pharisees and religious scholars were not pleased, not at all pleased. They growled. He takes in sinners and eats meals with them, treating them like old friends. Their grumbling triggered this story. Suppose one of you had 100 sheep and lost one. Wouldn't you leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the lost one until you found it? When found, you could be sure that you would put it across your shoulders, rejoicing, and when you got home, call on your friends and neighbors, saying, "Celebrate with me, I found my lost sheep." Count on it. There's more joy in heaven over one sinner's rescued life than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. Or imagine a woman who has 10 coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp, scour the house, looking for every nook and cranny until she finds it? And when she finds it, you can be sure she'll call her friends and neighbors, "Celebrate with me, I have found my lost coin." Count on it. That's the kind of party God's angels throw every time one lost soul turns to God. Then he said, there was once a man who had 2 sons. The younger said to his father, "Father, I want right now what's coming to me." So the father divided the property between them. It wasn't long before the younger son packed his bags and left for a distant country. There, undisciplined and dissipated, he wasted everything he had. After he had gone through all his money, there was a bad famine in all the country, and he began to hurt. He signed on with a citizen there who assigned him to his fields to slop the pigs. He was so hungry that he could have eaten the corn cobs of the pigs, but no one gave him any. That brought him to his senses. He said, all those farmhands who work for my father sit down for 3 meals a day, and here I am starving to death. I'm going back to my father. I'll say to him, "Father, I've sinned against God and I've sinned before you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Take me on as one of your hired hands." He got right up and went home to his father. When he was still a long way off, his father saw him, his heart pounding. He ran out, embraced him, and kissed him. The son started his speech. "Father, I've sinned against God. I've sinned before you. I don't deserve to be called your son ever again." But the father wasn't listening. He was calling to the servants, "Quick! Bring a clean set of clothes and dress him. Put the family ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And then get that grain-fed heifer and roast it. We're going to feast. We're going to have a wonderful time. My son is here, given up for dead and now alive. Given up for lost and now found." And they began to have a wonderful time. All of this, after this, his older son was out in the field. When the day's work was done, he came in. As he approached the house, he heard the music and dancing. Calling over one of the houseboys, he asked, "What's going on?" He told him, "Your brother came home. Your father has ordered a feast, barbecued beef." because he has him home safe and sound. Well, the older brother stalked off in an angry sulk and refused to join in. His father came out and tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't listen. The son said, "Look, how many years I've stayed here serving you, never giving you one moment of grief, but have you ever thrown a party for me and my friends? Then this son of yours, who has thrown away your money on whores, shows up, and you go all out for a feast." His father said, "Son, you don't understand. You're with me all the time, and everything that I have is yours. But this is a wonderful time, and we had to celebrate. This brother of yours was dead, and he's alive. He was lost, and he's found." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, our text begins with Jesus receiving a few lemons from the religious leaders of his day, for by this time, Jesus in his ministry had a reputation. He hung around with the wrong crowd, tax collectors and sinners. Tax collectors were Jews that were paid by Rome to collect Roman taxes from their neighbors. Now, if the taxes went to Rome, the tax collectors got to save everything over and above that he could extort out of his neighbors. Matthew was a tax collector. So was Zacchaeus. Sinners were people who broke the meticulous religious laws. They didn't wash properly. They didn't pray properly. They didn't worship properly. They were considered inferior by the religious leaders, and they were to be judged, ostracized, and boycotted until they changed. Simple as that. Jesus was different when it came to his attitude and behavior towards sinners and tax collectors. He spoke with them. He smiled at them. He touched them. He shook their hand. He put his arm around their shoulder. He sat down with them. He ate with them. He welcomed them. Now, the religious people couldn't understand this. So in ignorance and fear, they criticized. They threw lemons. They threw lemons at Jesus, and Jesus made lemonade. He responded not with bitterness or frustration or anger, but rather with 3 short stories. 3 of the most beloved parables to ever come from his lips. The lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son. Now, it's very important that we keep in mind what occasioned these stories. The criticism Jesus received because of the company he kept. That's why he told the stories. Now, God came to this earth in the physical form of Jesus to express his attitude towards sinners. I'll repeat that. God came to this earth in the physical form of Jesus to express his attitude towards sinners. These stories make God's character clear. What is God like? The people were confused. Now, of course, all men and women are sinners. All stand guilty before God's righteous standards. But Christianity teaches that you don't boycott sinners. You seek them. You forgive them. You love them. You welcome them. The religious leaders had a very shallow and incomplete theology. They knew of God's judgment, but they had forgotten about God's love and amazing grace and forgiveness, just like we do sometimes. To make his point, Jesus speaks of a shepherd looking for 1 sheep, for a woman looking for 1 coin, for a loving father looking and waiting for the love of his 2 sons. Now, Helmut Thielicke says that we should really call this 3rd parable the waiting father rather than the prodigal son. For Jesus' main purpose in telling this beautiful story is not to tell us about shepherds or how to keep track of coins. Jesus' main purpose is to tell us what God is like. And of course, Jesus is eminently qualified to answer this important question. Jesus said, God is like an anxious shepherd or a searching woman or a loving father who will let his children make their own decisions, even to letting them go, as painful as that will be. It's remarkable to think about it. Here is this selfish son who comes to his father and in essence say, "Look, old man, I'm tired of staying around this farm. I don't want to wait until you die. I want my inheritance now. Give me a share now." Well, this son's demand must have certainly surprised and hurt the father deeply. Obedient sons don't talk to their father like that. Punishment would surely follow. But, surprise, the father thinks for a moment and then responds, "All right, son, if that is what you want." Now remember, Jesus is answering the question, what is God like? Because the people, even the leaders, were confused. God is like a father who loves enough to let us make our own decisions. God did not create robots. God wanted to be loved, and lovers always allow others to make their own choices. God made us free to choose our own destiny. We have been given an inheritance just like that son. For example, we have amazing minds, and we can use them or waste them. We're free to choose. We have remarkable bodies. We can keep them in health or abuse them. We have a choice. We have the gift of life and time and precious relationships. These are all at our disposal, and we're free to choose. Now, of course, there are some rules that govern life. They're called the Ten Commandments. They're given in love to help make life worthwhile. But we're even free to disregard the rules. God made humans with a free will, not robots. That's the first thing Jesus teaches about God's character. Number two, God is like a father who's willing to wait for our decision. See, there's a difference between a lost sheep and a lost coin and a lost son. The shepherd can seek the sheep. The woman can sweep the house. But the father can only wait and pray. That's the ultimate consequence of our freedom. God will not force himself upon any of us. And God will not make us behave or be obedient, etc. We have the power of choice. And God is prepared to wait for us while we choose wisely. Now, sometimes we don't appreciate this characteristic about God. We prefer God to be following with us with a dustpan and brush and cleaning up all the messes. But the truth is, we make our own choices, we live by the consequences, and that's how we learn, and how this young son learned. This young man abused his freedom, and he wound up in a pig pen. Then he came to his senses. King James says he came to himself. He came to his senses. What a statement. That's the prayer of every parent or the prayer of every married partner. He realized he wasn't a pig. He was a young man. So he decided to return home, to confess to his father, and to ask forgiveness. God gives us a choice. God is willing to wait. And here's the third fact about God. God will always welcome us back unconditionally, even if we've been away for a long time. Even if we come back for selfish reasons. Even if. The picture of that father waiting on his porch, looking out over the farm, catching a glimpse of the familiar silhouette, recognizing who has returned and running down that path, robe and beard flying in the wind to embrace his son. It must be the most beautiful picture in all of literature. Now, the son did not deserve the reception that he got. The elder son becomes critical of this unconditional welcome of the father. My hunch is he's not upset about the brother's return. What bugs him is the celebration. Let the prodigal return, but not to a party. What kind of world would we have if we're sinners were all welcomed while all the God-fearing folks like us are still holding down the pews? Faithfully. Suppose the elder son had spotted his brother before the father did. Suppose he greeted him. Oh, you're back. Do you realize how much you've let us down? Do you realize how much you've cost us? Do you realize how embarrassed we were all these years? Are you hungry? So you're back. Well, no second chances here. Why don't you go back to your pigs and your prostitutes? Don't you suppose that this younger son would have figured that his brother was speaking on behalf of his father? To help God help the elder son, and to help those of us who identify with his attitudes. This son of yours, he cries to his father, he's not my brother. You see, he's excluded himself, hasn't he? He's your son, but he's no kin of mine. Now, God is like a father who always welcomes us back unconditionally. Now the father is separated from both of his sons, the younger by a life of recklessness, the older by a life of self-righteousness. The younger son, see, he sinned down deep in his behavior. The older son sinned high up in his attitude. The older son wants his father to love him, as he deserves to be loved, as if love is ever deserved, because he figures he's got it coming. He's earned it. He stayed put. He followed the orders. He did the right thing. He wants his father to love him for all of that. And his father does love him, but not for any of that. The father doesn't care, doesn't love either son according to what they deserve. He just loves them because of who God is, not for who they are. The older son is too proud. The elder son can't stand it. So he stands outside his father's arms, outside his father's house. The father tries to win him over. You're always with me. All I have is yours. My love for you and your brother doesn't preclude my love for your brother. It doesn't preclude my love for you. I have enough love for both of you. We're a family. We should be rejoicing. Your brother is home. He was dead. He's now alive. An invitation is extended to come back to the family. And for him, the older son, to come to his senses while standing in his pig pen of pride and judgment. And then the story ends. Jesus ends the story. And we're left with the question, did the older brother come to his senses? Who thinks the older brother came to his senses? I guess. Or did the older son remain convinced that his brother should be excluded because of his sinful behavior? How many hope the older brother responded and joined the party? We're all invited to take our place at the table, to be part of the family. We decide whether or not we will celebrate with our brothers and sisters, united by our relationship with our loving Father. For our God, who refuses to give us the love we deserve, but cannot help giving us the love we need. Let's pray together. Loving God and waiting Father, thank you for the Son Jesus and his wonderful stories. You are our Father who loves us enough to give us the power of choice. You're a Father who waits until we finally understand our predicament and turn around. And you are the Father who loves unconditionally. We're so grateful for these dependable characteristics of your nature. We would return to you in your loving embrace, and we would join the party, putting aside our judgmental attitudes towards certain brothers and sisters. We would take our place at the table. You long to establish and enlarge the family. We rejoice to be a part of your amazing plan for your wayward world. Hear and guide us today as individuals, families, as a congregation, needing your wisdom and direction. So help us prepare our hearts for a time of communion with you, a time to remember your unconditional love for each of us. Hear our prayers of confession. We yearn to please you. Amen.